Several years ago, I started to hear this really high-pitched ringing sound in my ears. That's usually a sign that your guides or your higher self is trying to reach you. But it was happening all week long, and I could not understand what they were trying to say. And my 11-year-old daughter came to me, and she sat me in the car, and she says, "Mom, I have something kind of crazy to tell you." And I says, "What is it?" And she said, "Your guides have been trying to reach you all week." And I started laughing because I had heard the sound and I knew they were, but I wasn't sure. And she says, "They have a message for you." And I says, "Well, what is it?" And she says, "You're supposed to do a soul retrieval." And I looked at her, and she's 11 years old, and I says, "What is a soul retrieval?" And she says, "Well, over people's lifetimes and in their current life, a lot of times when traumatic things happen, they're soul fragments." She says, "But yours just took off. Yours got hurt and just took off, and you just abandoned everything." And she says, "Unless you do a soul retrieval and you find your soul and you bring it into you and you find your divine counterpart, this world's going to end." Now, hearing this from a little girl, 11-year-old girl, I was a little bit like, okay, that's a little intense. And so I started looking up soul retrieval. And I discovered it was actually a real thing. In fact, shamans used to treat people very specifically with soul retrievals. And the first thing, if somebody became sick or they became depressed, they would just do a soul retrieval on them. This is also necessary if you have a lot of demon entities attached to you, because as your soul takes off, your body can start holding other spirits and beings. And so you want to do a soul retrieval on those. So I started learning about this, and I actually had one done. And what was really, really crazy about the experience was I got immediately sick. And I hadn't been sick like that for years. When I was younger, I got strep throat constantly, to the point where I would like almost die every single time. But I hadn't had it for almost 10 to 15 years. And I suddenly got it again. And I became like deathly ill, and I laid in my bed. And I'm very holistic, so I don't like to take antibiotics unless I absolutely have to. And so I was doing garlic, and we were doing whatever, but I got to the point where I couldn't swallow. But the crazy thing is, every time I closed my eyes, I was having these visions that were so intensely vivid. I could see, smell, taste everything. There's stories about being a god, and how God can see every hair that falls from your head and knows everything. And that's how it was. I could see every angle. I could feel everybody's emotion. I could see everything as if it was like happening right then. And I had about 30, and it was weird because it was like I had 30 seconds per vision. But the crazy thing about the visions is they were pretty horrific. It was people being killed, murdered, entire populations being devastated. And it was so tragic that about 2 days into it, I just started freaking because I couldn't sleep. And I remember there was this army coming, and I'm sitting there watching this army, and it was kind of like a heartless army, kind of like ISIS, just like taking away people's free will. And they were walking towards this beautiful, peaceful village of monks, and they were going to wipe them out. And I finally just screamed, "Is there something I can do? There's got to be a reason I see all this stuff." And suddenly, I am standing in the middle of the field, and I look very Egyptian, and my hair's down to my booty. But my dress was magnificent. It was like freaking filled an entire room, and it was light as a feather, and it was white, and I had gold streaming down, and it was the most beautiful dress. And here's the funny thing is, this arm is coming, and they look at me, and they take one look, and they flee. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with them? But I'm just looking at my dress like, this is freaking awesome. And they flee, and suddenly I'm taken to the next vision. And the next vision, this entire population has been wiped out by an army similar. And I ended up turning to the army and turning the entire army to ash. And I went into the village, and I regrew the bodies of all the people that died. And I watched their bodies all come back to life. And it was really cool to watch because I could see all of their blood veins regrow back. And it was just really cool and interesting watching these visions start. Every 30 seconds, I'd have a new one. And pretty soon, I realized I saw all crime. I saw everything that was happening. And I had 30 seconds to be judge, jury, and executor and decide what to do. And some of them weren't traumatic, like some of them weren't traumatic, like death, murder. Like, for instance, one time I was just glazing over water, and I came to a monastery, and there was this cute little monk inside, and he was singing, and he would be cleaning coins, and it was so vivid. I could smell everything. It was crazy. And he'd be cleaning these coins, and he'd be sticking 2 of the sacred coins away, and then he would slip one in his pocket. And then he'd do it again and slip another one in his pocket. And I just walked over, and I picked him up out of his pocket, and I set him back on the counter. And he freaked out. Like, he freaked out and started screaming and running and looking around like there was a ghost. I realized he couldn't see me at that point. And the next vision, the next vision, I'm running with these people. And as I was running with these people, I wasn't sure why they were scared, so I just was observing, and a little girl fell in a mud puddle and she started being trampled. And so I picked her up, and I thought, well, maybe she was important. I just need to save her. But no, the vision continued. And I came to this village. And in this village, I realized these people needed to get in or they were going to be slaughtered. But they wouldn't let them in. And it looked kind of like Iraq or Afghanistan or something. It was very... it was thousands of, it was like adobe everything. Like, it looked pretty ancient. Not something you would normally see today. And as I was watching them, I pushed open the door, and a few of them ran in, and then the door slammed again. And then I pushed open the door again, and a few more ran in, and then the door slammed again. And then this man steps out, and he goes, "Where's the witch?" And I realized at this point he still couldn't see me. And it was one of those things where you do something, and you just like, holy shit, I just did that? Because I didn't know my power. And I walked over to the man, and I picked him up by the neck, and I shoved him up on top of the door. And honestly, I was like, holy crap, I'm strong. Like, that was my inclination. But this weird, crazy blue light shot out of me and shot into his eyes. And then I told him, I said, you'll help I said, you'll help these villagers, and you will help every single person that ever comes to you in the future. And I commanded it. And that blue light shot out of his eyes and then into everybody else's, and they all bowed down. And I was like, oh, wow, that was trippy. And then I was taken to the next vision. And it was interesting because a shaman worked on me later, or I worked on a shaman a couple of years later, and she said, Natalie, I don't know why, but you have blue light that shoots out of your eyes when you work on me. And it just reminded me of that vision. And she talked about how she saw that I was the life giver and the destroyer, and that one day I would be able to turn people to ash. And I thought she was a little bit crazy, but it synced in with the dream. But the craziest thing is, a year after I had that vision, I watched American Sniper. And at the end of that movie, he's saved by a village. And when he goes in to ask the village why they did it, they says, we don't know. We've been doing this for thousands of years, where we just help whoever comes to us. And that moment gave me chills and confirmation that I was, in fact, who I was on the other side. And when I came out of the vision that week, my husband ended up going to get antibiotics because it got so bad. I came out, and my guide smiled at me, and I says, what the freak was that? And they says, Natalie, it's time you know who you are. And it was kind of that crazy feeling, but when I got out of bed that day, my finger started to burn where my wedding ring was. And I had to take it off. And I asked my angels why. And my soul all of a sudden was inside my body. And she says, because you belong to no man. No one owns you. Anyways, the reason why I'm telling you this story is to make you realize that you are so much more powerful than your body. And if you can absolutely, realize who you are on the other side, you can completely liberate yourself and stop being afraid of this world. Have a beautiful day, loves.